What are the chances of sweeping national tax reform? I asked Dr. Art Laffer. Dr. Laffer, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Brian.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about tax reform. What's going on the national front for corporate tax reform?
Well, we got corporate tax reform that I think is on the table. I mean, obviously we're not going to get personal income tax reform with Obama in there. He won't lower rates for sure. And I don't think we're going to get entitlement reform either. But corporate tax reform, I think, is a really good area. And as you know, Camp and some of the others have been, Baucus, I think, have been working on it. The one I'm really excited about is Darrell Issa is working with Jared Polis, as you know, a Democrat and a Republican.
And Darrell Issa is congressman from California, our home
California,
state.
Where I used to live.
Yep.
And Jared Polis also is from that area. He's a congressman from Colorado, a Democrat. Very good guy, great. He was an intern in my office when he was 13, 14.
A Democrat was an intern in your office?
Oh, a lot. I've worked more with Democrats than I have Republicans over the years.
I believe it. It's
really bipartisan stuff. Economics is not a partisan issue. It shouldn't be. I mean, when Kennedy did the tax cuts, he was great. The Republicans opposed it. Absolutely. And then you got Clinton, who was one of the best presidents ever. I mean, a disgusting person, but a great president. And Reagan, of course, was a Republican. And so you can get, it really is bipartisan. And if you look at corporate tax reform, there's a huge area because we have the highest single corporate tax rate in the world. We're not, well, not in the world, in the OECD. There may be some little country there, but of the 34 countries in the OECD, we're number one.
OECD, for our viewers at home, is?
The Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the major 34 countries of the world. That's sort of like the IMF or the United Nations, only selectively. Then what we have is we have about the lowest tax revenues as a share of GDP in the world. We're not the lowest, but we're right in the lowest little group. And it's way down from where it was in the mid-50s, early 50s, mid-50s. Back then, corporate taxes were about 5.3% of GDP. Today, they're about 1.4% of GDP. And you know, if you look at some of the other things, the tax codes are so arcane that no one can follow them. They're just, you have to spend fortunes complying with those tax codes. Any company does. In addition to that, there are a lot of pass-through corporations now that don't pay any corporate tax. And in '86, the C Corps were more numerous than the pass-through corporations. Now it's way the reverse. So it's a perfect time for major reform. Now, since the '86 Tax Act, when we dropped the rate from 46% to 34%, all right? Now Bush raised it to 35, but if you look at it, we were way below the average at that time. But now the rest of the world has cut their corporate tax rates dramatically. We just haven't kept suit with them. So the real thing is we have not stayed competitive, not because we've done something wrong, but because they've done something very right and we've not matched them. So it's time we move. Best way to do it, stop taxing profits. You should not tax successful corporations and pay off unsuccessful ones. There's a logic that some people use for redistributing income among individuals, but that logic does not apply to corporations. So what you want to do is have a low rate, flat tax on a broad base. My suggestion would be to have a value-added tax. If you did a value-added tax, you could get a tax rate below 5% and more than match all the current revenues. You create jobs, output, employment, prosperity. You bring that unemployment rate way down. You provide the revenues. So that's the way you go. This is the essence of what the Polis Issa tax bill is going to approach. Now, obviously, they're going to have to make it practical. And you know, there are people who want this, that, and that. So you should never let the best be the enemy of the good. But that is the direction I think we should go, and this is what the Issa Polis bill would look like, to my way of thinking.
No, I mean, you're obviously the father of supply-side economics, and you were involved in one of the largest tax cut in our nation's history. Do you think, because of everything that's going on with the IRS, today is an opportunity for real tax reform?
Well, it's an opportunity because the truth is out. You know, the IRS is a loaded gun. And these people who run at this institution are just like you and me. They have political views. They get all worked up. And you don't give heated combatants loaded guns unless you expect them to use them. So the reason you want a low-rate, flat tax is it defangs the IRS. It makes it so they can't use this as a political weapon against ordinary, everyday citizens. You know very well that if you have these types of weapons lying around, sooner or later, politically motivated people are going to use them against their enemies. And they've always have. You remember Nixon's enemy list, all of that stuff. This is no different. Obama is no less and no more corrupt than the other ones were.